If you're a Star Wars fan, you may feel a certain feeling when you hear the name George Lucas. Whether it's nostalgia or nausea, Disney has spent the last 5 years dividing the fan base of Star Wars, very similar to how George Lucas was during the prequels in the early 2000s. However, unlike Disney, George Lucas's ideas have always been more on the ambitious side. George Lucas may be the epitome of Hollywood big-budget filmmaking, but this man has always had a vision of a world he wanted to create. And while many of us have dreams that we will never aspire to, George Lucas had his dreams as well. After the unprecedented success of Star Wars, Lucas wanted to expand on his newly created world to the highest of possibilities. He wanted to create a saga that would expand across decades and centuries in the Star Wars universe. 9 movies to rule them all. Movie scripts can go through many changes, however, and an idea that you may have had at one point can turn into something completely different. Examples of this in the Star Wars universe include Princess Leia not always being Luke's sister, and Han Solo shockingly dying in The Empire Strikes Back. An idea turned into a script and brought to the big screen can be an epic journey all by itself, and it's not without its casualties. George Lucas was an ambitious young man in the 70s, and for the most part had his entire story laid out all the way down to the most microscopic of details. One of these microscopic details included the Journal of the Wills. Back when George Lucas created Star Wars, he came up with this idea that the Force was held together by these tiny living organisms known as the Wills. The Wills are these microscopic beings that secretly control the universe, and they feed off of the Force. Basically, they are the ones pulling all the strings behind the scenes. One of the most infamous moments in Star Wars history is in Episode 1, when Qui-Gon Jinn explains that the Force consists of midichlorians. The Wills originally intended to be part of the original Star Wars movie and would have played a huge part in Episodes 7 through 9 until George Lucas sold the movies to Disney. Lucas would go on to say in interviews that the Wills used the characters in Star Wars as a vessel to channel their energy through. The midichlorians would communicate with the Wills, and the Wills in a sense were what the Force was really made of. Fans who scoffed at the idea of midichlorians would have probably lost their minds at this revelation if it were revealed in the new trilogy. And while Star Wars Rogue One had scenes that referenced the Wills, there were no microbiotic beings to be seen. While the Wills are an event in Star Wars that have yet to officially be revealed as something canon, there are other events in Star Wars that were completely changed before the script became film. During the production of Empire Strikes Back, George Lucas fantasized about a sprawling epic that would take 9 films to make. While he would go on to make 6 of those films, he would originally intend to make as many as 12. If you're a Star Wars fan, you probably know that Return of the Jedi was originally supposed to be Revenge of the Jedi. The movie was going to be much darker and, according to some stories, feature the death of Han Solo. It's not known whether Han would die at the end of Empire or the beginning of Return of the Jedi, but either way, it was his fate to die. This would lead to a rather dark ending for Return of the Jedi, with Leia becoming a queen of her people, yet feeling isolated, heartbroken, and alone over the death of Han. Luke would, however, go on to defeat Darth Vader before going into isolation to study the Force. The most important difference between Revenge of the Jedi, however, was the fact that Leia was not Luke's sister. Also, the Emperor would more than likely not have been killed by Darth Vader, because the next 3 movies would see Luke training to become a Jedi Master to face the Emperor. The script would also bounce back and forth on whether or not Luke or Han would end up with Princess Leia. Even though Princess Leia wouldn't be Luke's sister, Luke, however, would have another sister, and Episodes 7 through 9 would revolve around Luke searching for this sister, while also mastering his Jedi skills on his journey to become a Jedi Master. While Luke was a Jedi Knight now, you don't become a Jedi Master without first training an apprentice. These movies would have surely featured Luke training some sort of new apprentice, similar to how the Disney movies turned out with Luke training Rey. Not much is known about Episode 7 pre-1980, other than Luke further mastering the Force and beginning his search for his sister. Luke's sister, however, wouldn't fully show up until Episode 8. Episode 7 basically could have been anything, and more than likely end with Luke discovering some revelation about his sister's location, and beginning his journey to find her. Who Luke's sister is, I don't know, but knowing Star Wars, she may have been a powerful key to the conclusion of the saga, or maybe just a personal journey for Luke, similar to how Rey is searching for her parents in the new saga. Episode 8 would see Luke find her, and it is said that she is being held by a dark force, possibly the Emperor. Episode 9 would be the grand finale of the series and the true end of the Skywalker saga. It would see the appearance for the first time ever of the Emperor that we had only seen in holograms to this point. Luke would become a Jedi Master and defeat the Empire once and for all. As for the original plans for episode 1 through 3, George Lucas always knew how he wanted those ideas to go down, even if getting there would have been greatly different, and in my opinion not as good as the way they turned out in the prequels. In the prequels, we get to see Anakin go from a boy to a man, all the way to a dark Sith Lord. While the films don't have the best acting or even the best character development, those little gaps of time between movies make up for it, and if George Lucas had went with the original ideas, there wouldn't have been much room to breathe. These early ideas for the prequels include Episode 1, a film that would focus on the origins of the Jedi Knights and how they are initiated and trained, as well as the birth of the Emperor. Episode 2 would feature the very first appearance of Obi-Wan Kenobi, as well as his path to becoming a Jedi Master. Episode 3 would be the first film to introduce Anakin Skywalker, as well as showing his training with Obi-Wan all the way to becoming Darth Vader. These ideas would have surely changed by the time of production, as well as they did, giving us the prequel movies we know today. While George Lucas denied ever planning on producing a sequel trilogy, there are many moments in time that contradict this. However, these trilogies were not easy to make, and things happening in his life such as getting a divorce with his wife and feeling like there would be Star Wars fatigue would stop him from accomplishing this early idea of the Star Wars saga. He cut down his ideas for this epic saga and packed much of it into Return of the Jedi, so he could properly close the series with that film, instead of spending the next 20 to 30 years working and milking the Star Wars films. It's a shame we live in a world of what could have been and have to wonder what these movies would have looked like. Even episodes 7 through 9 with the Wills seems like a fascinatingly bizarre idea compared to what we ultimately got with episode 7. Disney, however, owns all of these scripts now, as well as no telling what else that hasn't been revealed by George Lucas. Will Disney shamelessly poach some of these ideas and replace them with different characters, or will Disney take the high road and hire directors and writers to write a story that's on the caliber of the ones that George Lucas wrote in the 80s? Whatever happens when episode 9 hits theaters in December, episode 9 was the original endpoint for the series, and one that many people thought we would never see, even if it's not the one that George Lucas had originally envisioned.